The red sun of Kepler 442b was setting behind the mining towers when Sarah Chen finished her shift. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at the rocks she had been studying all day. As a scientist, she came to this distant planet to learn about new minerals. Like many humans, she thought working for the Galactic Empire would give her a better life. Sarah walked toward the workers' quarters where 49 other human women lived. They all had different jobs on the mining colony. Maria Rodriguez fixed machines. Dr. Lisa Park treated sick workers. Janet Wu grew food in the underground farms. Some women dug for precious metals, while others kept the computers running. The Zephyrian aliens who ran the colony treated humans like they were not very smart. The Zephyrians had blue skin and were much taller than humans. They had special devices in their heads that made them think they were better than everyone else. Most Zephyrians believed humans were just cheap workers who should do what they were told. That evening, Sarah was eating dinner with her friends when they heard screaming from the next building. They ran outside and saw Overseer Cathalon dragging young Amy Peterson into his quarters. Amy was only 19 years old and worked in the food storage area. "Help me," Amy cried as the tall blue alien pulled her inside. Maria Rodriguez was the first to move. She had been a soldier before coming to the mining colony. "We can't let this happen," she said to the other women. 20 women followed Maria to the overseer's door. They could hear Amy crying inside. When they tried to open the door, it was locked. "Open this door right now," Maria shouted, hitting it with her fist. The door opened and Overseer Cathalon appeared. He was angry and his eyes were glowing red. "Go away, humans. This is not your business." "Let Amy go," said Dr. Park, stepping forward. "She doesn't want to be here." The overseer laughed. "Human females are property of the Empire. I can do what I want." But the women did not move away. More humans came running when they heard the noise. Soon all 50 women stood outside the overseer's quarters. Sarah noticed something strange. The overseer's skin was turning purple, and he was breathing heavily. In her work as a scientist, she had studied how different species reacted to each other. "Something is wrong with him," Sarah whispered to Maria. The overseer was now sweating and shaking. The women were also feeling stressed and scared, which made their bodies produce special chemicals called pheromones. These chemicals helped humans communicate emotions to each other, but Sarah realized they might affect aliens differently. "Back away," the overseer gasped, holding his throat. "Your stink is poison." But it was too late. The Zephyrian's face turned completely purple and he fell to the ground. His body twitched for a few seconds, then became still. Amy ran out of the building and into the arms of the other women. She was scared but not hurt. Dr. Park checked the overseer's body. "He's dead," she said quietly. The women looked at each other with worry. They had only wanted to save Amy, but now an Imperial overseer was dead. "This would bring trouble. We need to report this," said Janet Wu. "Report what?" asked Maria. "That he died trying to hurt Amy? The Empire won't care about that." Sarah knelt next to the dead alien and studied his body. His skin was covered in strange marks like an allergic reaction. "I think our stress chemicals made him sick," she explained. "Humans and Zephyrians are not supposed to be this close when we're upset. So we accidentally poisoned him?" asked Amy. "It looks that way," Sarah said. "But the Empire won't see it as an accident. They were right to worry." Within an hour, Imperial ships appeared in the sky. Soldiers in silver armor came down and surrounded the human quarters. The soldiers were also Zephyrians, but they wore special masks to protect themselves. Commander Zelnoth was in charge of the soldiers. He was bigger than most Zephyrians and had scars on his blue face. "Which humans killed Overseer Cathalon?" he demanded. "It was an accident," Dr. Park tried to explain. "He had an allergic reaction." The commander hit her with the back of his hand and she fell to the ground. "Humans killed an Imperial overseer. This is xenocide, the murder of another species. We were protecting Amy," Maria shouted. Commander Zelnoth looked at all 50 women. "You were all here. You all participated. Under Imperial law, you are all guilty." The soldiers put metal chains on every woman's hands and feet. The chains were heavy and made it hard to walk. They were pushed onto transport ships like animals. As the ships lifted off from Kepler 442b, Sarah looked through a small window at the mining colony below. She wondered if they would ever see their home again. The other women were crying or sitting in silence. During the long trip through space, the women learned more about their situation. Guard Captain Vorthai enjoyed telling them about their fate. You will be taken to Zephyros Prime, the capital world, he said with a cruel smile. There you will face the High Tribunal. They will judge you for killing an Imperial overseer. What's the punishment? Asked Dr. Park. Death, of course. Public execution to show other humans what happens when they challenge the Empire. The women spent 3 weeks traveling through space. The ship was cold and the food was terrible. But they used this time to talk and plan. Sarah shared what she had learned about Zephyrian biology. Maria told them about Imperial military tactics. Each woman contributed knowledge from her own job and experience. They think we're stupid, said Janet Wu. That might help us. How? Asked Amy. If they think we can't fight back, they won't watch us as carefully, Maria explained. Sarah studied the guards whenever they brought food. She noticed that all Zephyrians had small metal devices behind their ears. The devices glowed with soft blue light and seemed to be connected to their brains. Those are neural implants, she explained to the others. They make Zephyrians smarter and let them communicate with each other mentally. But they also make them dependent on technology. What do you mean? Asked Dr. Park. I mean, they might not function well if those devices stopped working, Sarah said thoughtfully. When they finally reached Zephyros Prime, the women saw the biggest city they had ever imagined. Towers of crystal and metal reached toward the clouds. Flying vehicles moved between the buildings like schools of fish. Everything was clean and perfect, showing the power of the Galactic Empire. The prison where they were taken was underground. The cells were small and dark, but even here the women continued to plan and share information. They knew they would probably die, but they refused to give up hope. On their last night before the trial, Sarah sat with her back against the cold wall. She thought about her life as a scientist and all the things she had learned. She thought about the chemical reaction that had killed the overseer and wondered if there were other things about human biology that the Empire didn't understand. We came here looking for a better life, she said to Maria in the next cell. Maybe. We'll still find it, Maria replied. Just not the way we expected. Outside their prison, the great city of Zephyros Prime prepared for a trial that would change the galaxy forever. But the 50 human women were no longer just prisoners. They had become something much more dangerous. They had become a team. The Great Hall of Justice was the most impressive building on Zephyros Prime. Its walls were made of black stone that seemed to absorb light, and crystal windows showed the city below. Inside, 50 human women stood in chains before 3 Zephyrian judges. High Magistrate Kethvar sat in the center. He was old even for a Zephyrian, with silver markings on his blue skin and eyes that glowed like cold stars. To his left sat Judge Mordan, who handled military crimes. To his right sat Judge Yelna, who specialized in laws about different species. The courtroom was full of aliens from across the Empire. Some came to watch justice being done. Others came to see if humans could really challenge Zephyrian power. News cameras floated through the air, sending pictures of the trial to millions of worlds. Sarah Chen looked around the massive room and felt very small. But she also noticed important details. Every Zephyrian in the room had neural implants that glowed behind their ears. The technology was everywhere, in the floating cameras, the translation devices, and even the chains that held the women. Citizens of the Empire, High Magistrate Kethvar began, his voice echoing through the hall. We are here to judge 50 humans who murdered Imperial Overseer Cathalon. This crime shows that humans believe they are equal to their betters. Prosecutor Zenkith stood up. He was younger than the judges, but just as arrogant. These humans planned and executed the murder of an Imperial official. They used their primitive biology as a weapon, releasing toxic chemicals that killed a superior being. Dr. Lisa Park tried to speak. Your Honor, it was an accident. We were trying to protect— Silence! Judge Mordan shouted. Humans will speak only when permitted. But Sarah was listening carefully to how they described the death. The prosecutors called human stress chemicals toxic weapons and biological warfare. They didn't understand that the reaction was accidental, and they didn't want to understand. The trial continued for 3 days. Witnesses spoke about the crime. Expert Zephyrians explained why humans were dangerous and could not be trusted. The prosecutors showed videos of the incident, but they edited out the parts where the overseer tried to hurt Amy. During breaks, the women were taken to small rooms where they could talk quietly. Sarah shared her observations with the others. They're afraid of us, she said. Not because we're strong, but because we're different. They can't predict what we'll do. Maria Rodriguez had been watching the guards. Their security depends completely on their technology. Every door, every weapon, every communication device needs their neural network to work. What are you thinking? Asked Dr. Park. I'm thinking about electromagnetic pulses, Maria said. In the military, we learned that EMP can disable electronic devices. If we could create one, it would shut down their implants, Sarah finished. But we'd need specific frequency and timing. Janet Wu, who had worked with electronics in the food systems, joined their conversation. I've been watching their devices. The implants all pulse at the same rate, about 42 cycles per second. Over the next 2 days, while the trial continued, the women quietly developed a plan. Each contributed knowledge from her specialty. Amy Peterson, who worked in supply storage, remembered seeing certain components in the maintenance areas. Dr. Park understood Zephyrian anatomy from treating injured workers. On the final day of the trial, the women were allowed to speak in their defense. One by one, they told their stories. They talked about coming to the colony looking for work. They described the attack on Amy and their attempt to help her. Judge Yelna listened with what seemed like interest. You claim this was an accident, but you showed no respect for imperial authority. We showed respect for basic decency, Maria said boldly. No being should be forced against their will. High Magistrate Kethvar's eyes glowed brighter with anger. You forget your place, human. Your species exists to serve the Empire. You have no rights except what we choose to give you. Sarah stood up straighter. Then why are you afraid of us? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Murmurs ran through the crowd of alien spectators. The prosecutor looked uncomfortable. We are not afraid, the High Magistrate said, but his voice was not as steady as before. Then why this big trial? Sarah continued. Why bring us to the capital world? Why show our faces to the entire galaxy? If we're just property, why not just dispose of us quietly? Judge Morden struck his gavel hard. Enough. The court has heard sufficient evidence. The judges left to make their decision. Everyone knew what the verdict would be, but imperial law required them to deliberate. The women were taken to a holding room where they waited. Did you see how they reacted? Asked Amy. When Sarah questioned them, they got nervous. Because she was right, said Dr. Park. They are afraid. Not of our strength, but of our example. 3 hours later, the judges returned. The courtroom was packed with spectators from dozens of species. News feeds carried the trial to every corner of the Empire. After careful consideration, High Magistrate Kethvar announced, we find all 50 humans guilty of xenocide. The crime of killing a superior being cannot be forgiven. The crowd was silent. Even those who expected this verdict seemed shocked by the finality of it. The sentence is death by molecular disintegration, the judge continued. The execution will take place in 5 days at the Imperial Plaza, to be witnessed by all citizens. This will show the consequences of challenging the Empire. But then something unexpected happened. In the crowd of spectators, a small alien with gray skin stood up. What about their right to appeal? He called out. The judges looked annoyed. The gray alien was a Altarian, from a species that the Empire had conquered 50 years ago. They were known for following rules very carefully. There is no appeal from xenocide, Judge Yelna said. But according to Imperial Code 247, all beings have the right to request execution by combat, the Altarian continued. Even condemned criminals. High Magistrate Kethavar's face turned darker blue with anger. The Altarian was correct, but this law was very old and rarely used. It came from the Empire's early days when trial by combat was common. These humans are not warriors, the judge said. They cannot request combat. Sarah stepped forward. I request trial by combat for all 50 of us. The courtroom erupted in noise. Aliens talked excitedly among themselves. The judges looked at each other with confusion and anger. You would all die in seconds against an imperial warrior, Judge Mordaunt said. That's our choice to make. Sarah replied. The judges knew they were trapped. If they refused, it would look like they were afraid of 50 human women. If they agreed, they would have to provide a champion to fight them. After a long silence, High Magistrate Kethvar spoke. Very well. Since you prefer to die fighting rather than with dignity, the Empire will grant your request. Your champion will be Vextar the Rendering, the most skilled executioner in the galaxy. A cold feeling went through the courtroom. Every being in the Empire had heard of Vextar. He had never lost a fight and had executed thousands of criminals over the centuries. The combat will take place at the execution ground in 5 days, the judge continued. If by some miracle you survive, you will be free. When you lose, you will die. As the women were led away in chains, Sarah felt a mix of fear and hope. They had bought themselves 5 more days and a chance, however small, to fight back. That night in their cells, they continued planning. Maria had figured out how to build a small EMP device using components they might find at the execution ground. Sarah had mapped the frequency needed to disrupt Zephyrian neural implants. It's a crazy plan, admitted Dr. Park. Crazy plans are the only ones that work against impossible odds, Maria replied. Outside their prison, news of the trial spread across the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds, other conquered species watched and waited. For the first time in generations, someone had stood up to the Empire in open court. The 50 human women didn't know it yet, but they had already won something important. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be questioned, that its judges could be challenged, and that even condemned criminals could demand the right to fight. In 5 days, they would discover whether courage and intelligence could defeat the Empire's greatest weapon. The Imperial Plaza was the largest open space on Zephyros Prime. On normal days, it hosted parades and celebrations. Today, it would host an execution that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching. The plaza was filled with aliens from every corner of the Empire. Tall Zephyrians in their finest clothes sat in elevated boxes. Smaller species crowded into general viewing areas. Flying news cameras captured every angle, sending live pictures to countless worlds. Sarah Chen walked with her 49 companions across the Blackstone Plaza. Their chains had been removed so they could fight with honor, but they were surrounded by hundreds of guards. The women wore simple gray clothes that marked them as condemned prisoners. Despite knowing they would probably die, the women walked with their heads high. Dr. Lisa Park helped support elderly Margaret Foster, who had worked in the colony's accounting office. Maria Rodriguez stayed close to young Amy Peterson, who still seemed scared after everything that had happened. "Remember the plan," Sarah whispered to Janet Wu as they walked. "Find the power coupling near the platform. Give me 30 seconds after I signal." Janet nodded without looking at her. She had volunteered for the most dangerous part of their plan. While everyone watched the execution, she would slip away to sabotage the plaza's main power grid. The execution platform stood in the center of the plaza. It was made of white metal that reflected the red sun, and it held the molecular disintegrator, a weapon that could destroy living tissue in seconds. Around the platform, Zephyrian technicians checked their equipment one final time. High Magistrate Kethvar sat in the most important viewing box, along with other Imperial judges and officials. He had announced that this execution would remind the galaxy why the Empire was superior to all other civilizations. But scattered throughout the crowd were beings who hoped for something different. Altarians, the gray-skinned aliens who had spoken up during the trial, watched silently. Groups of conquered species from dozens of worlds had come to witness what they secretly hoped would be a miracle. At exactly noon, a deep horn sounded across the plaza. The crowd fell silent as Vextar the Rendering entered the arena. The Empire's greatest executioner was a terrifying sight. He stood nearly 3 meters tall and was covered in black metal armor. Cybernetic implants covered half his face, glowing with blue energy. His arms had been replaced with mechanical versions that could extend into different weapons. Neural interfaces along his skull connected him directly to the Empire's combat network. Vextar had fought in the Empire's wars for over 2 centuries. He had personally executed more than 5,000 criminals and had never lost a single combat. The crowd watched him with a mixture of awe and fear. "Citizens of the Empire," High Magistrate Kethavar's voice boomed across the plaza. "Today you witness justice against those who would challenge our natural order. These humans killed an Imperial overseer and must pay the price." Vextar walked slowly toward the center of the platform. Each step made a metallic sound that echoed off the surrounding buildings. His red eyes swept across the 50 women, analyzing them like targets. "You have chosen combat over dignified execution." His voice was deep and mechanical. "This choice shows the foolishness of your species. I will make your deaths quick." But Sarah stepped forward, and her voice carried clearly across the silent plaza. "We chose to fight because dignity means standing up for what's right, even when you can't win." A murmur ran through the crowd. On countless worlds, beings watched a small human woman face the Empire's most feared warrior without showing fear. Maria Rodriguez moved to Sarah's left side. Dr. Park took her right. One by one, all 50 women formed a line facing Vextar. They had no weapons, no armor, and no chance of winning a normal fight. But they stood together. The executioner activated his weapon systems. His right arm transformed into an energy cannon, while his left became a molecular blade. The implants on his head glowed brighter as he connected to the Imperial Combat Network. "Begin," commanded High Magistrate Kethavar. Vextar raised his energy cannon and aimed at Sarah. But at that moment, Janet Wu reached the power coupling she had spotted near the platform's base. Using tools she had hidden in her clothes, she began working on the connections. Sarah watched Vextar's weapon charge with deadly energy. She could see her death reflected in his mechanical eyes, but she also noticed something important. The blue glow of his neural implants was pulsing in perfect rhythm, just as they had planned. "Now," Sarah shouted. Maria Rodriguez pulled a small device from inside her sleeve. Over the past 5 days, she had built it using components smuggled from the women's prison cells. Wire from light fixtures, capacitors from food dispensers, and crystals from decorative items had been carefully assembled into a crude but functional electromagnetic pulse generator. The device was tiny compared to military EMP weapons, but Sarah's analysis of Zephyrian neural implants had shown exactly what frequency would cause them to overload. Maria had tuned their homemade weapon to that precise specification. As Vextar's finger moved toward his weapon's trigger, Maria activated the EMP device. The pulse was invisible, but its effects were immediate and devastating. Every piece of electronic equipment within 50 meters began sparking and failing. The floating news cameras fell from the sky. Security barriers shut down. Emergency lighting systems died. But the most dramatic effect was on Vextar himself. The executioner's neural implants overloaded instantly. Centuries of cybernetic enhancement suddenly became a weakness as electricity coursed through his modified brain. His red eyes flickered and went dark. His weapon systems powered down. For a moment, Vextar stood perfectly still like a statue. Then he began to shake violently as his implants fought against the electromagnetic interference. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the Empire's greatest warrior fell to his knees. Blue sparks shot from the devices attached to his skull. His mechanical arms twitched uncontrollably. Sarah had calculated that the EMP would disable his implants, but she hadn't expected what happened next. The neural interfaces that connected Vextar to the Imperial network created a feedback loop. As his implants failed, they sent error signals back through the network to other connected devices. Every Zephyrian in the plaza who was linked to the combat network suddenly felt the same neural overload. Guards collapsed as their implants sparked. Security officers fell unconscious. Even some of the judges in their viewing boxes cried out in pain as their enhanced minds were overwhelmed. But Vextar received the worst of it. His brain had been so heavily modified that it couldn't function without technological support. As his implants died one by one, so did parts of his enhanced consciousness. The great executioner's head began to swell as neural fluid leaked from his damaged implants. Pressure built inside his skull as organic and mechanical systems fought each other. His mouth opened in a silent scream that no one could hear. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, Vextar's head exploded. The crowd gasped in horror and amazement as the Empire's greatest warrior died instantly. His massive body fell forward onto the platform, leaking blue fluid from his ruined skull. In the sudden silence that followed, 50 human women stood unharmed while their executioner lay dead at their feet. High Magistrate Kethavar rose from his viewing box, his face dark with rage. "Kill them all!" He screamed at his guards, but the guards were in no condition to fight. Most were unconscious or barely awake from the neural feedback. Their weapons had been disabled by the EMP. Their communication systems were dead. Maria Rodriguez picked up Vextar's fallen weapon and found it still partially functional. Dr. Park grabbed security equipment from unconscious guards. The other women quickly armed themselves with whatever they could find. "Citizens of the Empire," Sarah's voice carried across the plaza as she stood on the execution platform. "You have seen what happens when superior technology meets human determination. We were sentenced to die for protecting an innocent girl. We chose to fight rather than accept injustice. In the crowd, aliens from conquered worlds began to cheer. For the first time in their lives, they had seen the Empire's power broken by courage and intelligence. Janet Wu finished her work on the power grid and cut the main connections. The plaza's security systems went completely dark. Emergency barriers that had trapped the crowd began opening automatically. "This is our message to every world in the Empire," Sarah continued. "No being should have to accept abuse from those who claim to be superior. Today we proved that the Empire's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness." As the women fought their way toward the plaza's exits, chaos spread throughout the crowd. Some aliens tried to help the humans escape. Others fought to capture them for the Empire. Most simply watched in amazement as 50 condemned prisoners did the impossible. In the viewing boxes, surviving Imperial officials called desperately for reinforcements. But their communication networks were damaged, and their security forces were scattered across the plaza. The 50 human women had done more than escape execution. They had humiliated the Empire in front of the entire galaxy, killed its greatest champion, and exposed the fatal flaw in Zephyrian superiority. As they disappeared into the crowds of fleeing spectators, they left behind a question that would echo across every conquered world. If 50 human women could defeat the Empire's best, what the underground tunnels beneath Zephyrus Prime were dark and filled with the smell of machinery. Sarah Chen led her 49 companions through passages that few beings knew existed. These service tunnels carried power and water to the great city above, and they had become the humans' escape route. "This way," whispered Janet Wu, who had studied the city's infrastructure during their imprisonment. "The maintenance exit is just ahead." Behind them, they could hear the sound of Imperial forces searching the plaza. Emergency sirens wailed across the capital city as news of Vextar's death spread. But the Zephyrians were having trouble organizing their response because their communication networks were still damaged from the EMP attack. Dr. Lisa Park was helping Margaret Foster, whose elderly legs were struggling with the rough tunnel floors. "We're almost there, Margaret. Just a little further." Maria Rodriguez carried equipment they had taken from the plaza: weapons, communication devices, and most importantly, a portable data transmitter. She had a plan that would change everything, but they needed to reach safety first. The tunnel exit led to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial section of the city. The building was old and filled with broken machinery, but it would hide them until they could find a ship. As the women caught their breath in the dark warehouse, Amy Peterson asked the question they were all thinking. "What do we do now?" "We can't stay hidden forever." Sarah looked around at her companions. These 50 women had come from different backgrounds and different worlds, but they had become something powerful together. "We do what we came here to do," she said. "We change everything." Maria set up the data transmitter she had taken from the plaza. "During the execution, I recorded everything: the EMP frequency, the neural implant specifications, even the technical details of how their network failed. If we broadcast this information, every conquered species in the galaxy will know how to fight back," Dr. Park finished. But Janet Wu looked worried. "The Empire will try to stop any transmission. They'll jam our signal or track us down." "Not if we do it right," Maria said. She had been thinking about this during their escape. "We don't just send the information once. We send it everywhere, all at the same time, using the Empire's own communication network." Sarah understood immediately. A virus broadcast. "We turn their network against them." For the next 6 hours, the women worked to modify the stolen transmitter. Each contributed her expertise to the project. Dr. Park provided biological data about Zephyrian neural systems. Janet Wu handled the electronic components. Amy Peterson, who had studied languages at university, helped code the message so it could be understood by different species. Meanwhile, Maria and Sarah worked on the most important part: creating a signal that would spread through the Imperial network like a disease, copying itself to every connected device in the galaxy. As they worked, they received their first sign that their actions were already having an effect. Through the transmitter's receiver, they heard emergency broadcasts from across Zephyrus Prime. "Riots have broken out in the alien districts," reported a panicked Imperial news anchor. "Several species are demanding answers about the execution incident. Security forces are struggling to maintain order." "Good," said Dr. Park grimly. "Let them struggle. But their work was interrupted when they heard vehicles outside the warehouse. Imperial search teams were checking every building in the area. "We need more time," Maria said, looking at the half-finished transmitter. Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. "Some of us will stay and finish the broadcast. The others will lead the search teams away. We stick together," Maria said firmly. "That's how we've survived this long. And that's how we'll succeed now," Sarah replied. "But success means getting this message out, even if some of us don't make it." After a brief discussion, they decided that 25 women would create a distraction while the other 25 finished the broadcast. Dr. Park would lead the distraction group, using her medical knowledge to help anyone who got hurt. Sarah would stay with the technical team to complete their mission. The distraction worked perfectly. Dr. Park's group made noise near the warehouse's main entrance, drawing the Imperial search teams away from the building. In the confusion that followed, most of the women escaped into the city's maze of streets and tunnels. But the remaining 25 women, led by Sarah and Maria, used the time to complete their work. As dawn broke over Zephyros Prime, they activated the virus broadcast. The signal was small and seemed harmless as it entered the Imperial communication network. But it carried something that would shake the galaxy: complete technical specifications for defeating Zephyrian technology, along with video proof that it worked. The virus spread through the network exactly as planned. Within minutes, it reached communication hubs on nearby worlds. Within hours, it had crossed the galaxy. Every computer, every data terminal, every communication device connected to the Imperial network received the same message. But the women added something else to their broadcast, something that made it even more powerful. Along with the technical data, they included personal messages from each of the 50 women, explaining why they had fought and what they hoped to achieve. Sarah's message was simple but powerful. "My name is Sarah Chen. 5 days ago, I was sentenced to death for protecting a friend. Today, I want to give you the tools to protect yourselves. The Empire claims to be superior, but they are only as strong as their technology. Take away their advantages and they are just another species trying to control others through fear." The effect was immediate and devastating for the Empire. On worlds across the galaxy, conquered species suddenly had the knowledge they needed to fight back. More importantly, they had proof that the Empire could be defeated. The first uprising began on Altair 7, home of the gray-skinned beings who had spoken up during the trial. Using the broadcast specifications, Altarian engineers built EMP devices and attacked the Zephyrian garrison. Within hours, they had disabled the occupying forces and declared independence. On Rigel 4, the insectoid Kythera used the human techniques to shut down Imperial mining operations. The bird-like avians of Sirius II adapted the EMP frequency to disable orbital defense platforms. Even on Earth's distant colonies, human settlements began preparing their own resistance movements. High Magistrate Kethvar watched the reports flood in from his emergency command center. Every few minutes, another world reported uprisings, equipment failures, or communications blackouts. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was falling apart in a matter of days. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his technical advisors. 50 primitive humans cannot destroy an entire galactic civilization." But his advisors had no good answers. The virus broadcast had revealed something the Empire had never wanted to admit. Their entire system of control depended on technological superiority. Take away that advantage, and they were outnumbered by millions of conquered beings who had every reason to hate them. Back in the warehouse, Sarah and her remaining companions prepared for their final escape. They had completed their mission, but Imperial forces were closing in on their location. "The broadcast is spreading faster than they can stop it," Maria reported, monitoring the communication networks. "It's reached at least 50 worlds already." "Then we did it," said Janet Wu, hardly believing their success. "We started it," Sarah corrected. "Now it's up to everyone else to finish it." As Imperial soldiers surrounded the warehouse, the women made their last stand. They had no intention of surrendering after coming so far. Using weapons taken from the plaza and tactics learned from Maria's military experience, they fought with determination that surprised their attackers. But their real victory was already spreading across the galaxy. The virus broadcast continued to replicate itself, carrying the message of human courage and alien cooperation to every corner of the Empire. On 1,000 worlds, Beings who had lived under Imperial control for generations suddenly realized they had the power to fight back. The technical specifications were important, but the example was even more powerful. 50 human women had faced impossible odds and won. As the battle for the warehouse continued, Sarah thought about the mining colony where this had all started. Overseer Cathalon had died from an accidental chemical reaction, but his death had sparked something much larger than anyone could have imagined. The Galactic Empire had tried to execute 50 human women to maintain order. Instead, they had created the catalyst for their own destruction. The revolution that followed would be remembered for centuries, as the day the galaxy learned that no being, no matter how powerful, could control others forever. The turning point had come not from massive armies or advanced weapons, but from courage, intelligence, and the simple human belief that everyone deserved to be free. 6 months after the execution that changed the galaxy, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of a stolen Imperial warship, watching another world declare its independence. Through the viewscreen, she could see the green planet of Vega 3 as its people celebrated their freedom from Zephyrian rule. The ship, which they had renamed Liberation, was now home to not just the surviving human women, but also representatives from dozens of species who had joined their cause. What had started as an execution had become a galactic revolution. Another Imperial garrison has surrendered, reported Commander Thixal, a former Zephyrian officer who had defected to their cause. That makes 47 worlds liberated this month alone. Maria Rodriguez, now the rebellion's military leader, studied the tactical displays. The Empire is pulling back to their core systems. They can't defend everywhere at once. Of the original 50 women, 38 had survived the battles that followed their escape from Zephyros Prime. Each had become a leader in the growing rebellion, training others in the techniques they had developed to fight Imperial technology. Dr. Lisa Park ran medical operations for the rebellion, teaching alien doctors how to treat species they had never encountered before. Janet Wu led engineering teams that built new EMP weapons and communication systems. Even young Amy Peterson had found her calling, leading diplomatic missions to worlds considering joining the revolution. But it was Sarah who had become the unexpected symbol of the rebellion. Her broadcast message had been heard on every world in the galaxy, and her name was known by billions of beings who had never seen a human before. "The Kythera delegation is ready to meet with you," said Amy, entering the bridge. The insectoid species had been among the first to join the rebellion, and their hive mind organization made them excellent coordinators for multi-species operations. As Sarah walked through the ship's corridors, she marveled at how much had changed. Beings from dozens of worlds worked together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways the Empire had never allowed. Humans worked alongside tall Altarians, flying Avians, and crystalline Zelmorians. The diversity that the Empire had tried to suppress had become their greatest strength. The meeting room was filled with representatives from the Free Worlds Alliance, as the rebellion had formally named itself. Each species brought unique advantages to their shared cause. The Kythera provided organizational skills. The Avians offered rapid communication across vast distances. The aquatic hydrants contributed advanced biotechnology. "The situation report," began Hive Speaker Zekth, the Kythera representative. 93 worlds have declared independence from the Empire. Imperial forces are consolidating around their original 15 core worlds. "What about Earth?" asked Sarah. She worried constantly about her home planet and the human colonies scattered across space. "The human worlds are secure," reported Captain Velnara, an Avian whose species could travel faster than Imperial ships. "Earth's government has officially joined the Alliance. They're calling you heroes." Sarah smiled, remembering her quiet life as a scientist before all this began. "I was just trying to save my friends." "And in doing so, you saved all of us," said the Altarian representative. The Empire's weakness was exposed because 50 humans refused to accept injustice. The meeting continued for hours as they planned their next moves. The Alliance now controlled enough territory to be a real threat to Imperial power. But they knew the Zephyrians would not give up easily. "They're developing new technology," warned Commander Thixal. "Neural implants that resist EMP attacks. Weapons designed specifically to fight multi-species forces." "Then we adapt," said Maria. "That's what humans do best. That's what all free beings do," added Dr. Park. "The Empire never understood that. Diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. As the meeting ended, Sarah found herself thinking about High Magistrate Kethvar and the other Imperial leaders. Intelligence reports suggested they were planning a massive counterattack, using every resource they had left. The revolution was far from over. That evening, Sarah visited the ship's memorial room, where they honored those who had died in the fighting. 12 of her original companions were remembered here, along with thousands of other beings who had given their lives for freedom. Margaret Foster had died in the warehouse battle on Zephyros Prime, but not before helping to complete the virus broadcast. Lisa Martinez had been killed leading a rescue mission on Tau Ceti. Each woman had made choices that put others' safety before their own. "They would be proud of what we've accomplished," said Dr. Park, joining Sarah in the quiet room. "I hope so," Sarah replied. "Sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing. So many have died because of what we started." "People were dying under Imperial rule too," Dr. Park reminded her. "They were just dying quietly, without hope. We gave the galaxy something to fight for." The next morning brought news that would test the Alliance like never before. Imperial scouts had discovered the location of their hidden base in the Proxima system. A massive fleet was already on its way to destroy them. "How long do we have?" asked Sarah as the ship's command staff gathered for an emergency meeting. 36 hours, reported the sensor officer. "They're bringing everything. Battle cruisers, orbital bombardment platforms, even experimental weapons we've never seen before." The room fell silent. Everyone knew this might be their final battle. The Empire was risking everything on one massive attack, hoping to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. "We could evacuate," suggested Commander Thixall. "Scatter to different systems and continue the fight from hiding." "No," said Sarah firmly. "We've spent 6 months proving that the Empire can be defeated. If we run now, we lose that momentum." Maria nodded in agreement. "Besides, where would we go? They'll hunt us down eventually. Better to make our stand here together." Over the next day and night, the Alliance prepared for the biggest battle in galactic history. Ships from 50 worlds converged on the Proxima system. Weapons were distributed to every being who could hold them. The humans shared their knowledge of irregular warfare, while other species contributed their own military traditions. But Sarah had one more plan, something that might give them an advantage even against overwhelming odds. During their months of fighting, she had continued studying Zephyrian biology and technology. She had discovered something that even their own scientists didn't fully understand. "Their neural implants don't just enhance their minds," she explained to the senior commanders. "They link every Zephyrian in their fleet together. It makes them more coordinated, but it also makes them vulnerable." "How?" asked Amy Peterson. "If we can get close enough to their flagship and overload their command network, it will affect every ship in their fleet. Like what happened to Vextar, but on a massive scale." The plan was extremely dangerous. It would require a small team to infiltrate the Imperial flagship during battle and manually overload its neural network hub. The chances of survival were almost zero. "I'll do it," said Maria immediately. "We'll all do it," corrected Dr. Park. "We started this together. We'll finish it together." As the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace, Sarah looked out at the thousands of ships arrayed against them. The Empire had brought enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. But they had also brought something else, their greatest weakness. The battle began with an exchange of long-range fire that lit up space like a new star. Alliance ships, smaller and more maneuverable than Imperial vessels, darted between the massive enemy battle cruisers. The tactics that Maria had developed, hit and run attacks using modified EMP weapons, began to take their toll. But the Empire's new technology proved effective. Their upgraded neural implants resisted most EMP attacks, and their new weapons were devastating against Alliance forces. Ships began falling on both sides as the battle intensified. In the middle of the chaos, Sarah led a team of 20 volunteers toward the Imperial flagship. Their ship was disguised as wreckage, drifting through the battle zone until they could attach to the enemy vessel's hull. The infiltration took hours of careful work. They had to bypass security systems, avoid patrols, and navigate corridors filled with armed Zephyrians. But their months of experience had taught them patience and stealth. When they finally reached the flagship's neural network hub, Sarah felt the same mixture of fear and determination she had experienced in the Imperial Plaza. The room was filled with complex machinery that hummed with energy. connecting the minds of every Zephyrian in the fleet. Just like before, she said to Maria, who was preparing their improvised overload device. Except this time we changed the entire galaxy. As Maria activated the device, Sarah thought about all the beings across the galaxy who were watching this battle. On hundreds of worlds, former slaves and conquered peoples were waiting to see if freedom was possible. The overload effect was more dramatic than anything they had imagined. As the flagship's neural network collapsed, every connected ship in the Imperial fleet experienced the same failure. Thousands of Zephyrian commanders suddenly found themselves cut off from their technological advantages. Imperial ships began drifting helplessly as their crews struggled with systems they didn't fully understand without their implants.